Hey everyone! In this video we're going to learn how to add colors using code. First, before we write the code, we're going to learn a bit about colors. In the digital world, colors are represented using what is known as RGB values, that is red, green and blue. And each of them, that is red, green and blue, are given a value between 0 and 255 to represent the colors. So that means if you give red the value 255, green 0 and blue 0, we get the color red. Similarly, if we want green, the value of RGB will be 0, 255 and 0. And for blue, we'll do 0, 0, 255. And for other colors, we'll have to give combinations of these numbers. For example, yellow is 255 red, 255 green and 0 blue. And to get this lavender color, we'll do R is 184, G is 154 and B is 255. And similarly, if we want teal, we'll have to do 144, 252 and 252. The interesting part of this is if all of them are 0, then we get black. And if all of them are 255, we get white. And if we give all of them as 128, you get gray. Sometimes when we want gray, since all of the R, G and B values are the same, we can refer to it with a single value. And that's what you see happening here in background, where we just say 220 instead of giving 3 different RGB values. So to start off with, let's try and change the color of the background. We can do this by giving RGB inside over here. So let's change it to maybe blue. So we've learned that we have to give R as 0, G as 0 and B as 255 if we want blue. And there we have it. Now, while this changes the color of the canvas, to change the color of the shapes, we have to use a different function. We cannot use background for shapes. And for that, we will use a function called fill. So first let's draw an ellipse that we can change the color of. So I'm drawing an ellipse in the center of the canvas of maybe width 200 and height 100. So this is still white. So to change the color of that, we have to use a function called fill. And we can again give RGB values to this. So let's try and make this ellipse red. To make it red, we have to give R value as 255 and G and B as 0. Now, one thing you have to remember is the fill function has to come before the shape that you want to color. And there we have it. Now let's draw another ellipse below this, maybe a smaller one in the bottom right somewhere. So maybe of size 20 by 50. Now you'll notice that this too is red. That's because once we set a fill color, it will use this for all the shapes that are drawn after it's been set. So if we want to change the color of this ellipse on the bottom right, we will have to once again say fill. And let's say we want to make it green, we'll have to add the color over here. So that's how we can change the color of the shape itself. Next, let's have a look at how we can change the color and the thickness of the outlines of these shapes. So we can set the color of the outline by saying stroke. The same way background is used for the color of the canvas, fill is used for the color of the shapes, stroke is used to set the outline of the shapes. So I want to make the stroke white, so I'm going to give all the values as 255. And there, you can see that there is a white outline along the ellipses, but the problem is it's still too thin. So what we can do is we can change the thickness of this by saying stroke weight. So be careful of the spellings. W is in capital in stroke weight. And typically the stroke weight is 1 pixel. But let's try and make it something thicker. So let's make it maybe 10 pixels. So it just requires one value over here, the thickness of the stroke weight. So that there's a much more visible outline to the ellipses now. And if you don't want any stroke at all, you can either say stroke weight as 0. You'll notice that there's no outline to these ellipses. The other way you can do this is by saying no stroke. This is the same as saying stroke weight is 0. It doesn't require any values in between the brackets over here. So when I run this code, once again, there's no outline outside the ellipsis. So this is how you can add colors to your drawings. One exercise you can do now is to open up your previous drawing of the emojis that we made and add colors to them like this. You don't have to stick to using just red, green and blue. You can make all sort of colors with RGB values. To do that, you can use a color picker like the one over here. So basically you can move your mouse around this horizontal bar over here and on this grid here, and that will give you the colors that you want. For instance, if this is the color you want, you can just look down over here and it will give you the RGB values. So once you know this RGB value, you can just copy it and you can paste it over here. And there, that ellipse is the same light blue that we'd picked on the color picker. We've added a link to a couple of color pickers in the description of this video, so do check that out. And have fun coloring in your previous drawing, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.